Welcome to Retiring Well and welcome to the new year, folks. We have a great show lined up with you, several great topics. We're going to be getting into what are life settlements and what does that mean to you. Then, going to be talking about 529 plans. Maybe you have a college student or a grandchild that maybe you want to save for further education. Then, diving into HSAs, health savings accounts. Should you have one? And finally, wrapping up the show, we have two different portfolios with some great examples of some possible real-world things that you don't want to have to be trapped with. Stay tuned. Coming up next, all this and more.
Retiring Well, brought to you by Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial advisors specializing in retirement planning and serving all of Northern Michigan. Retiring Well, helping you plan for a successful and comfortable retirement. Retiring Well. Plan to retire well.
So life settlements are a way that you can potentially sell your life insurance policy to a third party that would be interested in buying your life insurance policy. What if you're in a situation where the premiums on your policy have risen significantly and you're looking at that saying that's not something we can afford at this stage? Well, that's where potentially a life settlement might come into play to see if there's some other company or individual out there that may be interested in buying that life insurance policy. So you typically have three parties involved with life insurance. You have the owner of the policy, the insured, and then beneficiaries. So you can sell this policy again to a new owner, but they're also in that situation going to change then the beneficiary to themselves, and so when you pass away then they would collect the benefit. There's different types of life insurance that are factored into this, whether that's term life insurance, whole life, universal life, variable universal life, a variety of policies that could be considered in this scenario. The amount is going to vary based on your age, your health, maybe different the cash values you might have in the policy or death benefits, and so there's a variety of factors that come into play here. Companies out there that are doing this, they know the average life expectancy, they know what the death benefit is, and so they know that there's a future fixed payout, and so they're able to calculate then how much they'd be willing to pay to buy that policy. You could maybe instead sell the policy to an individual. There may perhaps be somebody in your family, a child that's a beneficiary that would say, well, maybe instead of just dumping that life insurance policy, maybe I'd be interested in paying those premiums to essentially then receive the funds back upon your passing. With life insurance, you don't want to just look back over all the years and say, well, I've paid in so much money into this policy, I don't want to mess with it anymore. You want to look at maybe forward looking of, what additional costs might you be putting into this policy over the remainder of your lifetime. There's also viatical settlements or agreements that come into play. These are usually in a case for more so for terminally ill individuals, so payouts may be a bit higher in that scenario. I know Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway Life Insurance Company is one that is out there that's regularly buying these different types of life insurance policy. So it's a big market, and it's one that you know the different factors involved because it involves death and death benefit payouts, and so again it's a situation where if you're sitting on a life insurance policy that you're unsure about, we'd love the opportunity to sit down and give you a second opinion on that.
Welcome back. What a great topic there, a unique topic, something that we don't really talk very much about in those life settlements. Just recently we had a client come in and they had a whole life policy and they'd been paying on it for the last 30 years or so, but what they learned is their premium was going to go up from $85 a month to almost $400 a month to maintain that same policy. And in this case, for these clients, they didn't have any debt, they were over the age of 60, so they didn't really need life insurance anymore. And come to find out, it made the most sense for them to take the cash value of that policy and run. And that's oftentimes times what happens for a lot of our clients as they get older in life. Life insurance just doesn't really make much sense for them, but everybody's situation is so unique.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that we always include a part of our meeting process is let's look at that estate, let's look at the life insurance that you might currently have in place, and then let's look at what other alternative life insurances you might need or want to put in place. You know, sometimes we find that we have to put life insurance in place just solely from a tax perspective, saying, hey, really long time from now we want to take some tax-free income. And so sometimes that's going to be something we put in place. Other times, people want to put a life insurance policy in place to pay the estate taxes or the tax bill on those tax-deferred accounts that their beneficiaries are going to receive. I just had a case recently where they had done a great job saving up, similar to Nick's story, where they were about 60 and wanted to get a good, thorough analysis of their current life insurance situation. The first thing we said is, well, if you don't really need the life insurance, is it worth anything? Can we sell it? And so we looked in that, and they weren't really a candidate to sell it, but we found out that maybe we could just reduce the amount of the policy that can then in turn reduce the premiums that are due. And so if you have any questions about what your life insurance or estate plan looks like, give us a call. It's a free, no obligation opportunity for you to come in and get some education on the purpose behind that plan with your life insurance policies. So stay tuned. Coming up next, we have 529s and HSA accounts.
At Centennial Wealth Advisory, we take a holistic approach to your retirement planning. So it's not just looking at what your investments are, but what is that long-term income plan for the next 30, 40 years of your retirement? What about taxes and what role they play in your retirement plan? Estate planning, what about life insurance, health insurance planning, all key areas to consider when looking at your retirement. So please visit our website or call the number on the screen. We'd love the opportunity to sit down with you for a no-cost, no-obligation visit.
Hi, in this segment I want to talk about 529 plans. Now these are accounts that parents and grandparents can put money into, okay, with after-tax dollars. Now for the state of Michigan, I think they allow you a deduction for MESP, but it's money you can put into an account that's called a 529 plan. It grows tax deferred, and then if it's used for education, then none of it is taxable. Now, just about every state has some version of this 529 plan. I know some of the universities will have their own 529 plans too. Now, 529, you know how it gets that name? It's just the IRS tax code that created these kind of plans. Now, mutual funds, just about every mutual fund company out there will have these 529s that you could do with them also. So there's a myriad of them out there that you can participate in. And again, they're like a Roth IRA in the sense that you're putting in with after-tax dollars, they grow tax deferred, and then if they're used for the proper purpose, then it's going to be tax-free. Now, what are educational costs that it can be used for? Well, for any university, room and board, okay, the actual tuition, their books, basically any educational costs they have for that education. Now, 529 plans allow for any tuition from K to 12. Okay, so you can use it for that as well. Now, the state of Michigan has two plans. They have one called the Michigan Education Savings Plan, MESP. Now, that one looks like mostly others. You're putting money in, and it'll have, you know, some accounts that you can choose from, conservative, moderate risk, and basically you put into them, and then those funds basically manage that money going forward. And what you're hoping is that they grow to enough to be able to cover those costs when the time comes that you need them. All right. Now, they're subject to market risk, which is in college education, university costs have been rising at, you know, very dramatic rates of recent years. So, you know, the growth on these, unless they're totally aggressive in the market, is having a hard time keeping up with those college costs as they're increasing. The one I really like is called Michigan Education Trust. Now, this one is more of a prepaid tuition plan. You literally pay for the costs ahead of time. But the nice thing about them is it doesn't matter how the college costs rise. rise, you're basically guaranteeing that education is going to be paid for. So I can pay for it today, 2 years at the university or 2 years at community college at today's rates for what it's going to cost me down the road. So I really like those. Now, for these 529 plans, you got to be careful. If the kids have them in their name, they can be, for FAFSA reasons, financial aid, 20% of it can be considered their assets. But if you leave it in the parent's name, only 5.64% is considered assets for FAFSA. Now, grandparents can put into these 529 plans, and that's not a bad idea. Not usually good in the first couple years, but in the last couple years of their education can be very advantageous. So if you're somebody just trying to save for college and maybe want some help trying to figure out which plan might be good for you, give us a call. We'd be glad to help.
Let's talk about health savings accounts, or a lot of people defer them as HSAs. So first, what is this? This is a tool that you're allowed to make tax-deductible contributions into. You get tax-deferred growth. You can invest it if you want to, leave it in cash or savings, and then as long as you're taking that money out to pay for some medical expense, it's tax-free coming out. They call that triple tax. It's basically the only account out there that's allowed to do that. Tax-deferred going in, tax-deferred growth, and then tax-free distributions. So very, very powerful tool out there. Let me give you an example of how you may use one of these. Let's say I have an HSA. Well, I have children, so we have to go to the doctor occasionally, right? Things come up with kids. So let's say I have a copay of $20 for my primary care physician. So my insurance maybe picks up the bulk of the bill, and I have this $20 thing. If I have money in my HSA account, I can write a check out of that, and that's a medical expense, right? It's paying a physician, so that there comes out tax-free. So I'm putting pre-tax dollars in, and I'm paying with pre-tax, but it's not hurting me from a tax thing. So on your tax return, think of it a way as reducing your income, reducing your taxable income, but still using that power to pay off medical stuff down the road. So their limits change every year, and depending upon if you're an individual or family, so I won't get into all that because they change all the time. But look those up. But really important though is you have to be eligible for one of these. Depending upon the health insurance plan you're on will determine if you can have an HSA or you cannot. So I basically should have said contribute to an HSA. You can, because a lot of times your insurance changes, whether your employer changes it or you change it. Some years you may be eligible and some years you may be not. If you're not eligible, all that means is you can't contribute that year. You can still own one and you still can use it, you just can't make new contributions until maybe you get under a new eligible plan. The other thing that's kind of unique about these, and a good thing, is there's no forced distributions. So think of like your 401ks and IRAs. You put these monies in at the age of 72, you have to pull this money out, required minimum distributions. HSAs, you could technically defer forever. There's no forced distributions. A lot of times people use them up over time because medical expenses arise and they're paying that. But if you were fortunate enough to put a fair amount of money in and had a great health and didn't need it, guess what? It could grow indefinitely for the most part along that. So if you don't have one, maybe look into how you can get one or seeing if you're eligible and see how it can play a role in your retirement, because there's some other neat things we can do with these later on in life.
Hey, welcome back. We hope that you found those two segments informational, and that, as I think about some of the things that the guys are talking about, one thing that comes to mind is which 529 plan might be appropriate for what you're trying to accomplish. when should you institute that, who should own it, who should be the beneficiary, where it should be located. You know, I have a client where their kids, their oldest just became a freshman in high school, and I said, good luck with that. And then I said, seriously, let's talk through how you might want to position your other assets and how you might want to let your 529 plan work in conjunction with the other retirement assets that you have. Because as you start thinking about FAFSA and when they use the base year for FAFSA for financial aid, you need to, in my opinion, make a plan for that. And so we have all the tools to help you first understand what the rules are, and then second, teach you about what an MESP plan might look like, or the MET plan, you know, that they referred to, how that might be able to fit. Second segment there, talking about the HSA. You know, I think there is a ton of confusion on HSA accounts, what they are and who's eligible for them. And so when anybody ever comes to me and they say, hey, we have a tax concern, one of the first things that I do is say, are you eligible in your healthcare plan to have an HSA? And I know, Nick, you have some specific examples.
Yeah, I mean, HSAs are my favorite account, basically. I mean, you got that triple tax benefit, right? Put it in, you get a tax deduction, it grows tax-free, and as long as you use the money for qualified medical expenses, you get to take the money out tax-free as well. For 2022, the contribution limits are $3,650 for individual, $7,300 for a family, and then if you're over the age of 55, you get that $1,000 catch-up bonus as well. But what we really like about these HSA tools is they're a great tax planning tool as well, especially if you're on marketplace insurance. So if we need to control your income in any way, let's say you're bumping up close to the income subsidy limit for marketplace insurance, and you want to show less income. Well, you can contribute up to $8,300 and show less income and still qualify for a decent subsidy through the marketplace. So very awesome account, something that if you qualify, you should take advantage of. All right, stay tuned. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about, or doing another blast from the past, talking about Steve versus Bill.
Every night around the table after grace, we all hold hands, and the child of the day that has done something kind gets to go and say family, and then we all follow through and say always and forever, no matter what, and then we squeeze hands.
What qualifies someone to be a foster parent is simply if they can love a child.
What Bethany Christian Services is to Michelle and I is a lot of different things. Kids don't come with a rule book, and foster parenting definitely doesn't come with a rule book, even though there's licensing and stuff that goes along with it. But what they are to us is a resource. And no matter what questions we have, it's an easy phone call to make, it's an easy email to make, and within minutes, if not the very next day, they're back in touch with us with an answer, a solution, or a helpful hint to try different things.
Hope keeps us going. But love is the reason.
Bethany Christian Services is a global nonprofit that supports children and families with world-class social services, all designed to help families thrive.
They love children. They love God. They know that they want to spread that love throughout the world and help those vulnerable children.
Love is not always easy in some situations, but you kind of let your barriers down. You let your guards down when you see children in this tough situations they're in. You kind of throw caution to the wind and don't think about the consequences. You don't think about the what ifs, and you just say, if I have a few days to fall with these children, maybe I can change their lives.
Fostering has taught us to be flexible, to have more faith, and let go and let God.
I want to help you. I want to give you some love. Come here, I want to give you a hug if that's okay. That's what qualifies someone to be a foster parent. You don't need to have all the answers, because nobody does. You don't need to have all the training down pat, because you can't. You learn as you go. But if you're willing and you have that love, That's what makes a good foster parent.
If you see a 2-year-old kid come into your home that's never had love, it will change your life forever.
It means that if you're sitting at our table, I don't care if you are a foster child, if you are a biological child, if you're adopted, if you're off the street, your family, always and forever in our house.
In this week in CFP Talk, we are talking about Steve versus Bill. This is going to be a lot of fun. So let's share the story. Steve and Bill are brothers, and here's what they do. They invest exactly the same way. They invest the same. They're in the same tax brackets. Everything is the same. They start retirement. The day they retire, they each have exactly $500,000 in their 401k. And remember, they're invested how? Yeah, that's right, the same way. They have the exact same funds, the exact same percentage, identical. They both take the exact same amount of income at the exact same time. $25,000 a year, they divide it by 12, take it out, on the same day every month. Everything is the same. 10 years goes by. 10 years goes by. Steve, his account, he put $500,000 in. He took out $25,000 a year. And his account balance, when he gets his statement, it says, hey, Steve, after 10 years, you have $1.3 million. Who wants to be Steve? Yeah, you do, right? You want to be Steve. I want to be Steve. That's fantastic. How's old Bill doing? Now, you would think, okay, now, Bill, same amount of money, same amount of income, same period of time, invested exactly what? Yeah, exactly the same. Same money, same income, same time period, 10 years, and invested the same way. He opens up his statement. His statement says, Bill, you have $225,000 or $1 million less. What happened? What's going on here? What happened? Same amount of money, same income, same time period, invested the same. Look at that difference. What happened? Well, here's what happened. Steve happened to retire January 1st, 1990. Bill, his younger brother, I forgot to tell you that, didn't I? His younger brother, by 10 years, retired in 2000. Same investments, same amount of money, same income. They just retired at different times. Now, here is the dirty little secret nobody tells you about. The dirty little secret is this. For most people, you are probably just like this. For the vast majority of people, the way you invest money, the way the financial industry teaches you to invest money, what they don't tell you is that you are wildly dependent on the dates. The day you retire. The day you retire has more to do with your success or failure in retirement if you invest the way most of the financial industry tells you. The day you retire makes a bigger difference on your future success or failure than any other factor. You invest in the classic balanced portfolio, roughly half stocks, half bonds. and you do it here versus here, you get wildly different results. Wild. In other words, you don't get to control what happens, do you? You don't get to, if you invest like most of what the financial industry, if you invest the way they tell you to invest, roll the dice, throw it out there. Maybe you succeed like Steve, maybe you fail like Bill, just based on what the markets do. You see, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with that because what's happening here is you have the ability to not depend on that. You have the ability, you could invest your money in such a way that regardless of these two time frames, you can end up somewhere in between. In other words, you can invest your money in such a way that it doesn't really matter what the markets do, you still end up okay. Why doesn't anybody tell you that though? Why don't they talk to you about that? I'll tell you why, because most of the financial industry, here's what they want. They live on hope. They live on this. They live on hope. They hope it goes well because that's where they get paid the most. They get paid on hope. Folks, you can do better. You can do better. This is a core component of what we do for our clients. We help you make sure that you're okay regardless of when you retire. Okay? It doesn't matter when you retire, you still need to be okay in our opinion. So if you want to talk about this, by all means, feel free to call the number on the screen, come visit us in the office, visit our website. We'd love to help you out.
Welcome back. What an interesting story there with Steve and Bill. I mean, two similar portfolios, but two drastically different results. And I think what it really boils down to is just planning, making sure that you have all aspects of your retirement picture accounted for. I mean, you can control when you retire, but you can't control what happens after that point, right? So we need to make sure that we talk about income planning, tax planning, investment planning, estate planning, having the whole picture looked at and having a second eyes on that to make sure that your retirement is going to work out to the best of your wishes.
Yeah, you know, those stories of Steve and Bill, you think about when they retired in 1990 and what the market did afterwards, and then you look at when they retired in 2000 and what the market did in those immediate years and after that, and that created two very different outcomes. And so one of the things that we get to help do is how can we remove our retirement risks of those negative outcomes as far away from the market as possible. Or another way to say that is not make it so market dependent, you know, and that's where putting in a diversified, holistic plan for you can help you be educated on the purpose of the positions that you have put into play, and that can give you, I think, a lot of security and a lot of understanding about why you do what you do. So if you're sitting there and you're wondering about what is our plan, do we have a holistic plan? What do we not know? Well, give us a call. We'd love to meet you. We'd love to sit down and help you first understand where you're situated, and then secondly, you know, help you plan to retire well. So I'm glad that you joined us. I hope that you have a great week, and tune in next week, same time, same channel.